Hebrews 12:6, for whom the Lord loveth, he chasteneth, and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth. Every child of God is chastised. Not one is excluded. God is committed to transforming you. He refuses to leave you the same way you were when he met you. He is absolutely determined to bring forth a change in you, and he does this through chastisement. The first thing you need to understand about chastisement is it's about what God's doing in you, not about what you've done. Amen. Chastisement is not punishment. Punishment focuses on the past. Chastisement focuses on the future. Punishment seeks a payment for a past action. Chastisement prepares you for a future event. God does not punish you. Jesus has already been punished in your place. But before you shout and dance too much, let me tell you this, God does chastise you. The second thing you need to understand about chastisement is because it's not punishment, it's not dependent on an act of disobedience. Even though he was without sin, Jesus was still chastised by the Father. The book of Hebrews says, though he were a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered. When God chastises you, it's not about you being bad. It's about you getting better. God knows you flourish in the furnace, so he uses chastisement to bring you into correlation with your destiny. Chastisement is about what God's bringing you into, not about where you've been. Now, while you're going through chastisement, there will inevitably who care more about the discovery of reason and incrimination than resolution and restoration, and they'll have a right now word for why you're going through what you're going through. Oh, if you'd have only baked those cookies for the church bake sale, you wouldn't have got cancer. Oh, if you'd have only showed up on couples night, you wouldn't have got divorced. Oh, if you'd have only made Junior come to Sunday school that third Sunday of March, he wouldn't have ended up on drugs. Oh, if you'd have only not allowed your daughter to go to that dance, she wouldn't have ended up pregnant. You know the type. They sift through your past trying to explain your present. The problem with that mindset is that if I look hard enough in everyone's past, I can find a reason why they deserve to suffer in the present. But what you're going through is not about what you've done. It's about what you're destined to do. God does not concern himself as much with what you've done as what you're doing. He's future-oriented. He's present-oriented. But he's not past-oriented. Chastisement is necessary pain because sometimes we have to feel in order to learn. Sometimes we have to experience it before we get it. Let me give you an illustration. When I was a boy, I loved food. I idolized food. I had a love affair, and my mistress was food. I was really an abnormal child. I didn't care anything about toys. I didn't want a Tonka truck, didn't care nothing about Legos. I wanted something to eat. Spam, ham, chicken. I didn't care what it was. I wasn't that choosy, but I did want something to eat. Christmas was not my favorite holiday. Thanksgiving was, because that's when they served all the best food. It got so bad that by the age of 6, you couldn't catch me out at the playground, out at the swing set, the teeter-totter without something in my pocket. Butterfingers, Snickers, a weenie, hot dog, it didn't matter what, but I was afraid that my blood pressure would drop while I was out playing and that I would collapse before I had the strength to make it back to the porch. So I always had an emergency snack on hand. And because we were poor, because we were a poverty-stricken family, there would be times in the month, mostly the latter portion, when our pantry would run dry. And in those times, I wouldn't simply accept it. I would go in the kitchen and I would grab a handful of Save-A-Lot bags and I would go house to house, neighbor to neighbor. I would knock on their door, hand them the bag, and instruct them to put something in it. I didn't care what they put in it. I wasn't choosy or particular. Green beans, corn, celery, it didn't make no difference to me. But if you were going to live close to me, there was a price to be paid, and I collected a food tax on a monthly basis. I'm telling you, I had a serious problem when I was little with food. Consequently, my love for food caused me to spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I always wanted to scoot up real close so that I could see all the food frying in the pan. I wanted to hear the crackle and pop of the grease. I wanted to watch Mom as she added one ingredient after another. And I wanted to be so close to the burner that I could feel the heat from the stove. Obviously, I realize some of you don't get this excited about food. But what you have to understand is that when you've done without, you tend to be grateful for things that other people take for granted. When you've wandered the wilderness and Joshua and Caleb come back carrying some big grapes, you tend to be grateful for those grapes. When you've suffered and scraped to get by, those grapes mean something. Let me put it into relevant terms for you. When you've ate light bread and gravy instead of biscuits and gravy, those grapes mean something. When you've had to change your tie because you couldn't change your suit, those grapes mean something. When you've had to formulate a wardrobe from yard sales, those grapes mean something. When you received your allowance and food stamps, those grapes mean something. When you fast on the last day of the month and feast on the first day of the month, those grapes mean something. Have we come so far as a church that we can no longer praise over the grapes? Can we no longer praise over the small things that most people overlook? Do we have the keenness of sight to see all the little things that God does for us on a routine basis? Can you wake up and say, Lord, I thank you that you gave me another day? Can you still praise because He put clothes on your back, a roof over your head, and food on your table? Can you still praise because you were able to get in your car and navigate your way home without getting in an accident, without facing turmoil or chaos? Can you praise over the things that most people overlook? Because anybody can praise Him over the extraordinary. Anybody can praise Him over the miraculous.